everyone. We have got a treat. Joining us today is Mr. Andrew Rice. Andrew, I'll give a quick little brief introduction. If you want to add anything, that's cool. But obviously the Director of Instruction there at the Club at Savannah Harbor, located in, Western Savannah Resort and Spa. Named one of Golf Digest's top 50 instructors, #1 in Georgia. So congrats on all those accomplishments, but obviously it comes with hard work, and been teaching over 25 years. I mean, that's obviously means thousands and thousands of hours on the lesson tee. And really, even before my time with TrackMan, which was 6 years ago, one of the early adopters and actually a TrackMan master professional. That's one of the questions that I had here for you. But before we get into technology and TrackMan, I'm a huge fan, follow of yours on social media. So if anybody listening here doesn't follow you on Twitter, be sure to give that reference. And you're a world golf traveler, and maybe you actually notice the pictures here behind me. I've had the fortunate ability to play golf and actually work at some great golf courses, one including Cape Kidnappers in New Zealand. And I was going to say, what is your #1 golf destination?
Oh, it's very close to Cape Kidnappers, Kyle. I love this question, but it's not Cape Kidnappers. It's not New Zealand. It's Australia. I've got to say, I know Australia is a long way away. New Zealand is far, really far. Australia is really far. But I will say, most keen American golfers have been over to the United Kingdom, to Ireland, to England, play those links golf courses, Scotland, certainly over there. I've got to give the nod to Australia. Firm ground, firm greens, fast greens, beautiful bunkering. I just love it. Are you
talking the sand belt specifically?
Sandbelt. If you went and played any course within an 80-mile radius of kind of the head of the Sandbelt, which is right where Royal Melbourne is, within 80 miles of there, you're going to be very happy.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate just to hop on a short 3-hour flight from New Zealand to go and play the likes of Kingston Heath, and one of my favorites was Metropolitan. Just the sheer bunkering. I mean, you just don't see that here in the U.S., right?
It's amazing. It really is amazing. And the golf courses, they can be difficult, but they can also be very accommodating. I think Royal Melbourne is the kind of golf course where anybody can have a nice day and shoot low under their handicap. Kingston Heath, Metro, you've got to be paying attention out there. You've got to hit the ball very, very well to shoot close to your handicap out there.
Absolutely, for sure. Well, good stuff. I'm glad we could, connect things like that. And I certainly do appreciate you wearing the TrackMan orange as well for this. So,
it's kind of handy, isn't it?
Well done. So my first question here was there's always been the thought that, TrackMan data is overwhelming and, not for me. I'm a feel-based player, right? But how much of that TrackMan numbers do you actually share with your students? And when you do share them, how do you explain it to them so that it's not overbearing or overwhelming?
Kyle, I like to use this analogy. Firstly, when I'm looking at the numbers, I want every number that I can possibly see. And I want to see them together and at the same time. I don't want to have to scroll through pages to find different numbers. And so I've got all the numbers up on I use my iPad. I've got an iPad Pro. So I've got all the numbers there. I don't certainly talk to my students about all those numbers. I liken it to this. If you go into your accountant's office at the end of the year, you're filing your taxes, and your accountant starts talking over your head, and he says this, and she says this, and this, and this, and all these different numbers, and it's like, whoa, that's too much. I liken it to this. What I try to do as a coach is I'll pick out that one primary culprit of what's causing the problems, and I'll say, you see that number? That number's -12. We've got to get that number to +2. Okay, let's move that number. And all of a sudden, I know this from my experience, when I go into my accountant's office and he's talking about all these different numbers, and all of a sudden I go, hold on, time out. I don't get this. I got to understand this. He says, you see this number? This number's too big. We got to get this number down. But then all of a sudden it makes sense, and I liken it to that. I like to see all the numbers. I want to see the whole picture and how it all fits together. My students don't necessarily need to understand that or even see that, but I'm going to pick out one of those numbers, maybe two, and say, this is the primary culprit, this is the one we've got to fix, and if we do fix this, watch how the second number gets better.
Right,
and
right.
Oftentimes that's the case.
No, that's a fantastic answer. And, going back to that, I would say, let's say that one number that you referenced was minus 12.
Yes.
Let's say that number was club path, for example. Would you help explain to them what that actual number means and the definition of it? And how did you understand what club path meant? You've been teaching golf for many years, but you had to understand what swing direction and launch angle and spin loft was. Like, for these coaches that are listening, what's the best opportunity for that? I know that we have TrackMan University. Did you dive into that early on and really educate yourself? But really, going back to the first part of the question, do you explain what the definition of, club path or face angle may be?
Sure. What I do, Kyle, is I call them alignment strings on my tee. And it's really just a braided piece of rope, kind of fine rope, 1/4 inch rope with 2 T's pushed through the end. And they're always on my tee box pointed straight at the target. TrackMan's pointed straight at the target. And so I go, okay, club path, let me explain what that means. You see the string on the ground? This is 0. Your club, as it ran into the ball, was traveling 12 degrees from out to in. Assuming right-hander, 12 degrees from out to in, and that's as it impacted the golf ball. It's not how you went back. It's got nothing to do with that. It's talking impact. And I really try to give people a nice, simple picture, because I know this. I need a simple picture. I think most people appreciate something that's clear, concise, and understandable.
Right. Absolutely. And do you explain the negative and the positive, or really that's just a visual that you put with the braided rope on the ground?
I think that's just a visual. Negative, I say negative is to the left, positive is to the right. We've got to try to get this -12 to a +2.
Gotcha. And do you feel like if a player, maybe not necessarily your 20 plus handicap, but really, what a lot of these coaches are working with, elite junior players, do you feel if the player has an understanding of path and face and maybe some of the basic ball flight laws, they can sometimes self-diagnose what's going on the golf course, so that you as their coach or you as their instructor don't have to always be over their shoulder watching it?
It's amazing. Certainly what TrackMan has done for my coaching ability is certainly my understanding of ball flight, Kyle. But I see it every day, the role that it plays in sharing, in quantifying, in communicating what it doesn't necessarily tell the student what to do, but it says, with a little explanation from said coach, it shares the information with the student that says, hey, -12, that's why you're slicing. Let's work towards, and the next swing they go, they're trying a drill, they're trying a feel. I've given them some information, a few changes to make, and the next swing they make is -3. Wow, whoa, that was, that's kind of good. We're more than halfway there. Keep going. And
right.
So really, in the initial part of a lesson, I'm using TrackMan to tell me what the problem is. In the latter stages of a lesson, I'm using TrackMan to inform me, the coach, how my information is working. I've got a set objective. I want to get this player to hit some draws, this -12 slicer to hit some draws. So we've got to get the club path from in to out to some degree. And it's going to inform me how I'm doing during the course of the lesson. Beyond that, for high-level junior players that you mentioned, high-level players of any caliber, really, once they've spent a certain amount in front of TrackMan, they go, I'm not hitting it that good. Let's hit 3 shots. And they hit 3 shots. Oh, I got it. I know why. Okay, let me try this. There we go. I had a player today, a very high-level player, North Carolina state champion. His club path was too straight, and he likes to hit draws. And so as a result, his draws were finishing left of the target. Not much, but just a little bit left. So I said, come on, we've got to nudge that club path 2 degrees. We've got to get that club path 2 degrees more to the right. I said, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to tell you we want that club path more to the right. All of a sudden, he did it. Beautiful. Little draws, starting right, finishing at the target. And it's amazing how once players get the feel of what they need, it's not being overrun. It's got nothing to do. The people who don't use TrackMan, who don't understand how TrackMan works, they will say people are going to get obsessed with numbers. Not at all. Golfers, human beings, get obsessed with balls that do what they want. And that's really what we're after. And TrackMan just helps us. It guides us to make those correct decisions and those informative, effective is a better word, effective changes so that we can get the ball to match the picture in our head.
No, absolutely. And I always say, people are like, oh, the data is confusing. I'm like, well, it's just a scale in your bathroom. Whether you like the numbers or not is a different story, right?
Well said. I like that.
But, going back to these elite players, whether they're, high school players, college golfers, or even, professional players, I mean, is there really numbers that you would say are more often looked at with those types of players versus maybe your 20 plus handicaps? Or is it's probably it depends answer, of course, right?
It always depends. When it comes to golf instruction, the more I learn, the more I know, the more I realize it depends. I would say this though, for every golfer, I'm looking at club path and club speed. For college players, I might introduce a little bit more to do with dynamic loft. I might introduce a little bit more to do with attack angle, launch direction, which is really face angle, as we know, relative to the club path. And so I'm going to look, as far as better players go, I'm going to look a little bit more towards that direction. Certainly, once we get into dynamic loft coupled with speed, we're going to look at height, peak heights. I think that's a number that I use often in my lessons. If somebody's got lots of speed and too much loft, the ball's clearly going to get too high off the ground, and vice versa, it's going to stay too low.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that, has been fortunate for me working with TrackMan is the fact that I get to go to a lot of PGA Tour and Korn Ferry and LPGA Tour events, and I see players using the Performance Center, right? The Test Center and the Combine on a daily basis, right? Are there tests that you have that maybe you've built into the Test Center, or maybe just other fun, call it games that you use with your players that aren't really so much worried about what your path is or your phase or your dynamic loft, but rather just what did the ball do relative to maybe an intent that you prescribe? So, we had a great conversation with the two gentlemen yesterday, and they have these little games. I don't know if you had your own little fun games that you like to play with these, more skilled players.
Kyle, I really do like to keep it quite simple. I think it's important to challenge a player, but I don't think it needs to be this player is challenged with this long-term over the course of an hour, for example. I like to give them 5-shot, 3-shot, 10-shot challenges. For example, I've got a wedge test in my system that I use all the time, and it's got distances from 20 yards to random distances from 20 to 100. And it's just 10 shots. Yep. And let's see what you score. Let's test your skill level when it comes to hitting those wedge shots from 20 to 100. I like that. Full swing. This is something I think that's quite important, particularly for the upper level competitive golfer. A practice, a drill that I've got my students to work on is, if you could picture, actually I've got a diagram right here. I'm going to grab this and show you. And so the dot represents the player's carry distance with that iron. Okay. I like to, and I drew this for a student of mine earlier today. I like to see if they can take a 3-shot challenge. This young golfer I was teaching today carries his 7-iron 183 yards. Okay. Wow. Yes, it's proper. Okay. 183 yards. Well, the challenge is you've got a 10-yard by 10 yards square to the left of the target. There's trouble to the right. Can you land your ball in that square? 10 by 10 square to the right of the target. Can you land your ball in that square? And a 10 by 10 square short of the target. Can you take a little bit off of that club and make it land somewhere? If it's 183, it's to 173. Somewhere between 73 and 83. So you've got to hit those 3 shots. And I certainly prescribe this player likes to hit little draws. And so I like to see little draws to the left, little draws to the right, and little draws a little shorter. And so it's simple 3-shot challenge. That's really difficult. If you haven't, I know a lot of young players at the moment, they've been on lockdown. They haven't really been playing competitive golf. So they've been working on their technique. They've been working on their golf fitness. But the one thing this player really struggled with today was, and that's why I came up with that little diagram for him, is he struggled to be able to control his golf ball. Swing looks good. Speed is amazing. But controlling the golf ball, ultimately playing golf, performance, the Performance Test Center, that's what it's all about. And so that 3-shot test is something that I love. I've done that for a long time with a lot of students. Another simple one, Carl, is I call it 5-a-side. Where I'm looking, let's say a player's got an 8-iron. They're going to pick a target out there, and depending on their skill level, they may have 30 feet on either side of the target, or they may have 40 feet. But I need 5 shots going 1 to the left, 1 to the right, 1 to the left, 1 to the right, 1 to the left. 5 consecutive shots. And so it gets the player engaged. It gets them into it. They can see where that ball's finishing on TrackMan. And sometimes they're going, oh, 40 feet, that's going to be close. Oh, sorry, too bad. 42 feet, start again, back to 0. Right. And so I love those little things to get players engaged, to get them into the performance aspect of the game.
No, that's one thing that I always like to see when I have the chance to go to these universities and show coaches Test Center, because if a player's just hitting 7-iron after 7-iron and they hit a bad shot, what are they going to do? They're just going to rake another ball over and hit another one, right? But if you give them this intent or this challenge, like we all have this competitive, DNA in our body, right? And you don't want to lose, right? And I think this was maybe many years ago, and it doesn't really relate to the way that you would typically play golf, but I think I remember you saying something about like having like excessive curve and seeing if you can like curve a shot right to left, maybe start with 12 feet, then go to 15 feet, maybe the next one's 30, but you have to get more curve every single shot. And you would never do that, but that maybe goes into a little bit about like, is golf instruction getting into like this skill and whoever's most skilled, or maybe it's always been who's the most skilled, but leveraging that as part of these coaches? I mean, obviously they have hours that they spend with their team practicing, but you can't just hit 7-iron after 7-iron or 5-foot putt after 5-foot putt. That'll become old after week 1, right? Yeah, no doubt about it. It's skill development. And some things I've come up with over the years is exactly that one, that amplifying the curve, or you can even reduce the curve. Start off with as much spin axis tilt as you can possibly create with whatever club you've got in your hand, and see how many shots you can go to get it to where ultimately it doesn't curve at all. And so each one's got to be progressively less curve. You can do the same thing with height. Start out low and go and try to climb the ladder. You can do the same thing with speed. I think that's a nice challenge. I once had a 55-year-old golfer who swings a 7-iron. Now, they can't start out at 10 miles an hour. Okay, they've got to start out at their regular club speed. Okay, full swing speed. And he swings a 7-iron at the time at 87 miles an hour. I think he had 13 shots. He got up to, I think it's 94 miles an hour. 13 shots that were progressively faster club speed from shot to shot to shot. And it's great incentive. And really, like you said, everybody loves a challenge. And so create this challenge for your players, for your students, and say, let's go. Let's see if we can get that speed going. It's amazing when you get people in some kind of a competition, how well they can do. Yeah, and talking about the skill, but also your 3-square game, I really love that. That was fantastic. But one was short, right? And you have to be able to control maybe clubhead speed to hit that ball purposely short. Do you feel like that is something that's actually really important in having higher skill, is the ability to control clubhead speed? Because you said earlier, like that's one of the numbers that you always have that you're looking at.
For sure. Well, here's the deal. If this player hits a 7 or carries a 7 on 183 yards, what do they do when they've got a 178 pin?
Right.
Do they take an 8-iron and try to jack it? Or do they need to learn to take that club and hit it 15 feet, which is not much, okay? 15 feet shorter. Yes, they do. The answer must be yes, they do, simply because if you want to compete at the highest level, 15 feet is a big deal. 15 feet is a big deal. And when you hit that ball properly, you need to have the skill to at least be able to get that ball to go 15 feet shorter than a full swing.
Absolutely. And talking about, 15 feet and when it's important, obviously with wedge play, right? I think, when looking at, you've written books, you've done DVDs. I would consider you one of the, wedge ninjas and masters out there, right? Talk to these coaches and those listening about what data parameters maybe you feel are most important with wedge play.
When it comes to wedge play, I look at dynamic loft, I look at launch angle, I look at spin rate, and I look at carry. Dynamic loft, launch angle, spin rate, carry. So dynamic loft, if somebody's hitting a 50-yard pitch shot off of fairway grass, I prefer a dynamic loft of around 45 degrees.
Okay.
Stock for everybody. Give me something around 45. It's a little up or a little below, I'm fine with that. Give me something around 45. For launch angle is largely determined, and I'm still working on those guys at TrackMan HQ. Okay, they've got to put friction launch in there as one of the parameters, simply because the launch, if you can deliver 45 degrees of loft, you can launch the ball at 42 degrees or 28 degrees.
Right.
Or anywhere in between. And that's purely determined by the amount of friction created between the club face and the golf ball. If it's wet, if you've got a dirty club face, if you're hitting range balls versus premium balls, there's so many different factors that are going to determine where that golf ball launches. Okay. And once we understand friction, so we've got 45 degrees, we launched it at 28. If you launched it low, spin rate's going to be high. Low launch, high spin.
Which is, again, golf is a game of opposites. And that one really, you ask anybody on a Saturday at a public golf course, okay, watch this wedge that launches at 45 and watch this one that launches at 26. Which one has more spin? 100% of them are going to say the higher one. When we know it's almost probably about half the amount of spin.
Yes. I'm yet to see a properly struck pitch shot that launches higher with more spin.
Yep.
I'm yet to see it. You can, if it's frictionally compromised, yes, it's going to launch higher, but it's got lower spin. But a properly struck shot that's launched higher off the ground, it's almost always got less spin.
Yeah, and I've always heard, launch angle, and it's interesting that you throw in dynamic loft because that's truly what the player is delivering, at impact, and ball speed is just an equation of, that as well, to be able to control your distances. So that's all fantastic stuff. Absolutely. One thing here, and I'm not sure if you teach indoors or if you have a teaching facility where you hit into a net, but obviously with weather and a lot of these universities being, north where half of their spring season is compromised because of, the inability to get outside. How can coaches be productive indoors into a net with, technology speaking?
Carl, that's a good one. It's certainly more of a challenge. Simply because, and the challenge for a lot of the modern day technology is this: if you hit a ball off the toe, that causes the face to open. If the technology reads the face as open, because it can't track the flight of the golf ball, it will typically predict that the golf ball is going to start right and move further right. And so as a result, I find that using this technology indoors, it can be a challenge. I would challenge coaches to say, hey, come up with dynamic loft challenges, come up with club path challenges. How many swings can you make that are within 1 degree of where you would like to be? whether it's dynamic loft or club path or attack angle. How many consecutive swings can you make? You can mark the face up and start to get a sense of what's happening there. But really, I would say speed, dynamic loft, club path, attack angle, I would work hard on those once a coach or a team or a player moves indoors. I would work hard on those factors on the indoor side. I wouldn't get too much into, wow, where did that ball finish or how far did it travel? I'm going to look more at club numbers than ball numbers. Gotcha.
And going back to the wedges here, as we have just a couple more minutes, would you say that's one thing that, an elite junior player that's maybe going through the ranks and is a junior or a high school player can almost mask or hide with really good ball striking, and then could really take their game to a new level in the 4 years at a university by focusing on the wedge play? Like, I don't think a college golfer gets a scholarship by having poor ball striking, right?
Sure.
But there's probably players out there that are really good ball strikers, but could have significant improvement to their wedge play that would obviously take their game and their team to a new level.
Cal, agreed, no doubt about that. That's not true for everybody. It's true for most. I would say this: golfers, particularly competitive golfers, need to learn to tap into all the progress buckets that are available to them, whether it's fitness and nutrition, whether it's club fitting, whether it's technique, whether it's understanding their statistics. That's the key to becoming more rounded. Players most often are going to make significant improvements by improving their systems, not necessarily their swing. How do they go about practicing their wedges? How do they go about practicing their pitch shots? It's so important for golfers to mature in that capacity. And it's statistics, it's understanding this data, this TrackMan data that they're being exposed to, that they may have almost daily access to, and going, okay, this is what I need to work on, and this is my package. They need to establish better systems. Decision making on the golf course, using the statistics that they all have nowadays to be able to help them practice more effectively, coming up with some cool skill development games that they can use TrackMan technology with. That's going to make the change, and that's how they're going to start to save stroke. Got it.
No, very good for sure. And this is my last question here. And again, Andrew, this has been a lot of fun. I mean, I really do appreciate you taking the time here today. And
my pleasure, Kyle. My pleasure.
This would be great. So, getting a little bit away from skill, but now I'm going to go into technique, right? I had to throw one question, of course, that is technique driven. And I, during these current times, I've watched a lot of your lockdown learning, and those have been fantastic there on your YouTube channel. But what do you feel is one of the most critical aspects of the golf swing, or maybe even impact interval, that a elite player can possess? I'm not big into golf instruction like I was before, joining TrackMan. Is it face angle control? Is it the way the club shallows? I mean, there's a lot of different philosophies out there, but what do you feel is the most critical, or one of the most critical, that these elite players can possess?
Kyle, there's two important things, okay, when it comes to technique and swinging the golf club. Number one, speed. And the thing, certainly when I was growing up, you had long hitters and short hitters, and long hitters stayed long and short hitters stayed short, and nobody worked on developing speed. Nowadays, we understand more, we have more data, we have a deeper understanding as to what it takes to increase speed. Players can do that. I've seen significant changes over the years, gains of 10 plus miles an hour. Okay. Yep. So we can move that needle. The second factor is, so we got speed and club face control through impact. Club face control. Once you've got that speed, oftentimes, and this is apparent for a number of players who get to the PGA Tour or the LPGA Tour, that top tier of competitive golf, they get a little slower. Why? because they understand the value of what they need to do to control, keep that golf ball in play, keep that golf ball in the fairway, keep that golf ball on the green. And so it's club face control. And there certainly are elements of the golf swing that are going to facilitate a player being able to manage the club face better versus perhaps have a good round and a bad round, or a good 6 holes and a bad 12 holes. It's that timing factor. The better the mechanics, the better the player is going to be able to predictably control the face. And so to me, speed, number one, you got to have that if you want to play competitive golf anywhere. And then the difference maker beyond speed is, can you control the face? Can you control the face? That's my take. And any golfer should really be working on, when it comes to full shots and hitting the golf ball with a full swing, you got to work on those two things. There's not much else really. So shallowing the club is taking place so that the player can rotate better, so they can get themselves in a better impact position, have the handle working up and in and forward as the club head passes through impact, so they can better control the face.
Got it. Got it. Man, that's brilliant stuff there. And hey, you know, that's time's up for sure, but that is a wealth of information for sure. Many years of your expertise and years with TrackMan. So again, we appreciate you taking the time. You know, we'll certainly keep in touch. And, you know, for anybody that's, you know, out there listening, be sure, like I said earlier, to follow Andrew on both your social media. Obviously, one of the best coaches in America, and fortunate to have you a part of Team TrackMan. So thank you again, Andrew.
God, thanks so much. I just want to close with this. I use TrackMan every single day on my lesson tee, and I've used TrackMan. I've had access to TrackMan for a decade now, and there's not many people who've had TrackMan for a decade now. I think I've had the 2, the 3, the 3E, and now the 4.
Yeah.
And I will say this, every single day when I get out on my lesson tee and I pop that stand and those sexy little legs pop out, that thing works like a charm every day. And I cannot commend you and your company enough on a fantastic product that has made me a better coach. It's made hundreds of coaches that much better. It's deepened my understanding, and it really has changed the way. It's made teaching golf so much more fun. And so thanks to you and all the guys at TrackMan. I know many of them. It is a fantastic product, and I'm not sure I would have as much fun coaching golf without TrackMan.
You know, you wouldn't be the first person to tell us that. And it's funny that you can have those very heartwarming stories about golf instruction, and it's changed my life, and the fact that I was getting bored on the lesson tee, and TrackMan changed that. And for me, I mean, I get to wake up every single day and represent probably the coolest company in golf, you know, of course, you know, coming from our opinion. But you're right, we're constantly innovating. We're zero complacency. Go ahead and update your unit as well. Maybe you saw the email about the new firmware update, so go check that out, and then use it on the putting green as well, which we didn't even get into today, but maybe next time. And thank you again, Andrew, for taking the time. We'll talk to you soon.
God, thanks a lot. I enjoyed it. Take care.
You got it. Bye now.
Bye.